My name's James Walker, and I've been Emily Carter's assistant for 7 years straight. Yes, that Emily Carter, CEO of Carter Group, heiress to a snack empire, the kind of woman who wears a custom-tailored blazer like it's battle armor and walks into a boardroom like she owns the damn building, which, let's be honest, she usually does. The woman has never once tripped in heels. And I've been there through it all, from her intern to CEO transformation to launching new product lines, navigating lawsuits, and surviving 5 economic cycles and 3 public scandals. What did I get for my loyalty? Fired. Well, almost. It happened the day she announced her engagement to Ryan Kim, that rich boy who thinks a last name and a few billion make up for his complete lack of brain cells. The man sauntered into the office with his Rolex glinting like a disco ball, pulled Emily in close by the waist in front of the entire executive floor, pointed at me like I was gum on the bottom of his Louboutins, and said, "Fire him. We're getting married." Like I was some annoying souvenir she needed to toss before her wedding. Emily didn't even blink. She brushed him off like he was lint on her sleeve and said coldly, "Then maybe we shouldn't get married." And just like that, she walked off, heels clicking like gunshots on marble. I should have been relieved, grateful even, but I was too busy wondering what the hell just happened. I mean, I'm just her assistant, right? I carry her coffee, I organize her meetings, I argue with contractors, I yell at logistics when shipping delays happen. I'm not some secret lover or a forbidden affair. At least, that's what I thought. Until I passed by the marketing department and overheard Nathan read the office gossip overlord whispering dramatically, "You seen the boss lately? She's glowing." But poor James, man's aged 10 years since she announced the engagement. Pause. What? Aged 10 years? Me? I nearly tripped over my own shoes. It's sad, Nathan continued, sipping from his iced Americano. Dudes followed her like a loyal dog for years, and now she's marrying some pampered golden boy. I wanted to barge in and scream, "I'm tired because I've been working overtime, not because I'm heartbroken." But I didn't. Instead, I speed-walked back to my office, cracked open a bottle of water, and tried not to choke on the taste of bitter reality. That afternoon, I knocked on Emily's office door with the latest HR files in hand. "Come in," her voice came from inside, sweet and professional, as always. I walked in, laid down her schedule, and handed her the promotion list. "After reviewing marketing's performance, I don't recommend promotions this quarter." Conversion rates were low despite increased budget. She nodded, scribbling her signature in that elegant cursive she somehow makes look effortless. "Makes sense," she murmured, "especially with Ironhead doing nothing but spreading rumors." Ironhiadaka Nathan Reed was the very same gossip monger from earlier. I should have known he'd catch wind of something eventually. But that something being me and Emily. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm not some tragic male lead from a slow-burn CEO romance novel. I'm a regular guy, a corporate mule who barely has time to microwave leftovers. Romance? Please. And yet, every accidental touch, every shared meal, every lingering glance, people saw what they wanted to see. Even I started questioning it. Like when we were in the elevator, crammed in with half the tech team, and a sudden jolt sent me straight into Emily's arms. She held the back of my head like I was some delicate flower, whispered, "Overweight, will wait," and sent the entire team scurrying out in silence. All I could do was fix my hair and pretend my ears weren't burning red. Or that time we had lunch at La Vita Rosa, this Italian spot in Lakeview Hills. Emily wore a sleek dress, hair tied back in her usual no-nonsense bun, and I could feel the entire restaurant staring at her. The waiter asked if we wanted the couple's special free dessert included, and before I could object, she said, "Sure, it's a deal," like it was the most natural thing in the world. I choked on my water. "It's cheaper," she said when I stared. "Why waste money on a la carte lobster?" I almost cried. She caught me using her engagement as an excuse to eat luxury seafood. And I was still recovering from that financial shame spiral when Ryan showed up at the restaurant like a demon in Gucci. "You think you can afford this place?" he sneered, eyes darting between me and Emily. "Couples menu? Are you serious?" I smiled with corporate grace and said, "Boss wanted to make sure the venue was worthy of your taste. Just a test run." His expression twisted like he'd bitten into a lemon. "Next time, stay away from her," he barked. "Or your job's gone." The sad thing-ish wasn't entirely wrong. Not long after that, I started to feel it, the creeping tension, the looming threat. I stopped eating lunch with Emily. I ordered her food through apps. I even rerouted her meetings to noon so she'd be forced into lunch appointments with others. But Emily caught on. One day, she looked up from her laptop, tilted her head, and said, "I don't want takeout anymore." So I scheduled all her lunches with old men and boring shareholders. A week later, she messaged me at 10 p.m., "Come over. We need to fix your scheduling." I refused. It was late, and I had laundry. She didn't care. 2 minutes later, she kicked open the door to my apartment. "Perks of living in the same building, I guess." "Quick sync," she said, already on my couch. I opened my laptop and pulled up her calendar, heart racing like a hunted squirrel. "Why is Ryan suddenly in my itinerary again?" she asked, voice ice cold. "He kept texting me. I figured if you saw him once, he'd stop bugging us." Emily leaned back, arms crossed. "Don't let his personal agenda interfere with your job again." "Yes, boss." I wanted to cry. I'd survived 7 years with her, built her schedule from scratch, and now, some idiot in designer shoes was jeopardizing everything. I grabbed a tissue, ready to sob. But then she slid a takeout box across the table. "Eat." It was the same lobster from the Italian place. I stared at it, then her. "I'm avoiding late-night carbs," I whispered. She narrowed her eyes. "Eat it before I fire you for insubordination." And so I cried into my $60 lobster. That's when I realized, working for Emily Carter meant navigating boardroom politics by day and emotional landmines by night. The next morning, she dropped a bomb on me, "You're planning my wedding." I choked on my coffee. "I don't think that's in my job description. It's PR. It'll go public. That makes it work-related. Won't the groom have opinions?" "I'm paying. You're planning." And just like that, I was roped into organizing a multimillion-dollar society wedding for the woman I might be kind of falling for. With a budget of $3 million and my dignity on the line, I did what any reasonable assistant would do, started researching how much I could skim from venue markups without going to jail. Because if I was gonna plan the wedding of the century for my boss and the man who keeps threatening my job, I was at least going to earn a little trauma compensation. So there I was, sitting on my apartment floor surrounded by wedding catalogs, fabric swatches, and a $3 million budget spreadsheet, asking myself the existential question every underpaid assistant eventually faces: at what point does job loyalty become Stockholm Syndrome? Emily Carter, the woman, the myth, the perfectly blow-dried legend, had just officially assigned me to plan her wedding to a man she clearly didn't even like. "James," she said earlier, with that signature calm that always precedes disaster, "make it iconic." That was it. No color scheme, no guest list, no clarification on whether she actually wanted to marry Ryan Kim or just set him on fire. All she gave me was a number and an ominous nod before tossing me back into the corporate jungle to make magic happen. And somehow, I still said yes. That's the kind of chokehold she had on me 7 years deep, and I couldn't even form a no. A few hours later, I was in a high-end showroom being verbally assaulted by Ryan Kim himself. He dragged me into a luxury mall, demanding to pick out his wedding attire. "Get me something expensive. I want everyone to know who's paying for this circus," he sneered as he tossed a hand-beaded blazer onto the fitting room rack. The salespeople fawned over him like he was royalty, and I stood there smiling like a hostage with a clipboard. "James," he called out smugly, "what do you think of this diamond-studded tie?" I looked at Ethidius, glitzy, and priced at $180,000 and replied with my most corporate smile, "Sir, it certainly reflects your personality." He preened, completely missing the sarcasm, and that was when I realized I might survive this job on passive aggression alone. At some point, Ryan pointed to a pair of glittering loafers in the window and barked, "Bring those over. I'll try them on." The clerk scurried off, but Ryan, eyes gleaming with cruelty, turned to me and said, "You put them on for me." "Excuse me?" I blinked. "You're the wedding planner, aren't you?" he smirked, leaning back on the plush velvet couch. "Make yourself useful." My eye twitched. I considered smacking him with the shoe box, but instead, I opened my laptop right there and pulled up the budget tracker. "Actually," I said sweetly, "we're already at $1.06 million for your outfit alone. The shoes push us into the red. Unfortunately, as the person controlling the funds, I can't authorize this purchase." Ryan looked like I just slapped him with a tax bill. "You're telling me what I can and can't buy," he growled. "That's right," I replied, smiling like a villain. "This wedding is being coordinated through company funds for PR. You're technically just a guest of honor." He stood up so fast I thought he'd combust. "I'm telling Emily. She'll fire you herself." "Can't wait," I said, already sipping the free sparkling water the boutique had handed me. "Let me know how that goes." The next day, I was in Emily's penthouse sorting through sponsorship contracts when she called me into the living room. She didn't even look up. "What did you let him buy yesterday?" A matching ego to his insecurities, I muttered, before catching myself. "Sorry. I mean, $1 million suit and a bad attitude." She sighed, running a hand through her perfectly styled hair. "He's getting more unstable. Because he can't control the narrative," I offered. "That's what people like him hate." She paused, eyes narrowing. "Then maybe we should give him one to chew on." That's when things got crazy. Emily asked me to schedule a romantic dinner between them, something classy, intimate, press-worthy. I booked a table at La Vita Rosa again, ordered the same couple's menu, added wine, and even had the staff rehearse the lighting. But when I watched her step into that Bentley to meet Ryan, something in my chest tightened. I should have felt proud. I'd pulled off a flawless arrangement. Instead, I rode the subway home fuming for no good reason, telling myself it was just indigestion and not jealousy. I got home, kicked off my shoes, and stared at my ceiling like it had answers. She was just my boss. My extremely attractive, terrifyingly competent boss who occasionally made my heart flutter with the smallest glances. That's normal, right? Everyone's a little in love with their CEO. Around 9 p.m., I got a text, "Come over. We need to fix your attitude." I ignored it. Then came the knock. Or rather the kick. She let herself in and plopped on my couch like she paid rent. "Short meeting," she said. "Short?" I gawked. "It's 9 o'clock. You scheduled me to drink with old men all week. I've had enough of your sabotage." I opened my laptop in defeat. "I thought you didn't want to eat lunch with me anymore." "I didn't say that," she snapped. "You just stopped showing up. You're engaged," I said, throwing up my hands. I was trying to respect boundaries. She glared at me like I'd murdered her cat. "You don't get to make those decisions for me. I'm your assistant. You're more than that." The silence was deafening. I closed the laptop slowly. "Excuse me?" She stared at me, face unreadable. "Forget it," she muttered, standing up. "It's late. Let's eat." She shoved a box into my hands. It was lobster again, of course. "I can't keep eating lobster," I said. My blood pressure's going to explode. Then die tastefully, she replied, sitting down next to me. I gave in. Again. Because fighting Emily Carter was like arguing with a hurricane. You might feel justified, but you'll still get blown away. The next morning, after the 10 a.m. staff meeting, she handed me a thick envelope. This is the official wedding planning file. Venues, designers, guest list, everything. You're still going through with it? I asked before I could stop myself. She looked me in the eye. Do you think I should? Honestly? I swallowed. No, good, she said, tucking a pen behind her ear. Then make it so perfect that if I cancel, I still come out on top. That's how I knew she wasn't just testing mesh, was making a statement. This wasn't a wedding. It was a war. And somehow, I'd become her general. That afternoon, I sat in my office building a pitch deck for wedding vendors, sipping burnt coffee, and listening to Nathan mumble about PR headlines. Then my phone buzzed. Ryan. Again. We need to talk, he texted. Now. I sighed and headed out, fully expecting another round of rich boy tantrums. He met me at a cafe 2 blocks away, already seething. Emily said she's not marrying me. Care to explain? He hissed. Maybe because you're acting like a lunatic? I suggested. Wrong answer. He grabbed my collar, dragging me halfway across the table. You've been sabotaging me. Scheduling fake dates. Making her hate me. Oh please, I deadpanned, pulling out my wedding spreadsheet. She's spending $3 million on this circus. You're welcome. Also, you're wearing the tie I picked out. He blinked. It was on the list. Exactly. I smiled sweetly. You'd be nothing without me. His jaw clenched. This isn't over. I certainly hope not, I replied. Because I still need your check for the rehearsal dinner. He stormed off, muttering threats, and I went back to my laptop, already adding potential assault hazard to the risk log. Later that week, Emily summoned me to her storage cellar to prep some wedding favors. Somehow that turned into me sorting through luxury gift boxes while she teased me about being her live-in husband. Why are you always in my space? She asked, smirking. Because you pay my rent, I deadpanned. And because you like it here, she added softly. I didn't answer. Because yeah, maybe I did. Maybe I liked being close to her. Maybe I'd liked it for a long time. And maybe just maybe she knew. Just as I was about to say something stupid, the doorbell rang. It was Ryan, of course, carrying a cake and calling her, babe, like he didn't just try to murder me with his eyes. I panicked. Hide me, I whispered. Emily rolled her eyes. You're such a coward. No, I hissed, I just don't want him to think we're. You know. Sleeping together, she said way too loudly. I clamped a hand over her mouth. Please. Mercy. She laughed. Then the sound of footsteps thundered down the hallway. Emily. Who's in your house? Ryan screeched. I braced myself. The drama was about to explode, and this time, I had front row seats to my own funeral. If you've never been hunted through a luxury penthouse by your boss's psycho fiancé while holding a box of designer neckties and a pair of suspicious black and white bandages, congratulations, you're doing better at life than I am, because that was my exact situation 5 minutes after Ryan Kim kicked open Emily's front door like he was raiding a cartel hideout, screaming her name in the most annoying, fake affectionate tone ever. Babe, I brought cupcakes, which sounded way more like I brought threats and insecurity. And before I could even duck behind the wine rack, I heard the sound of Gucci loafers stomping across marble and knew I was seconds away from being sacrificed on the altar of rich boy rage, so I did what any overworked, underpaid assistant would do: flatten myself against the back wall of the storage cellar, clutching a bundle of Emily's gifted accessories and praying to every deity in existence that I wouldn't end up trending on Twitter as home-wrecking mail. Assistant gets sued and cancelled in real time, but of course Ryan had to go full CSI mode, stomping from room to room while yelling, "You've got someone in here, don't you? You're cheating on me," and honestly, the delusion was so thick I could smell it from downstairs, and just when I thought I was safe, the door creaked open and his eyes locked on mine like a villain catching the protagonist mid-plot twist. "You," he shrieked, pointing at me like I'd eaten his lunch and stolen his inheritance in one breath, "what the hell are you doing here?" And before I could answer with something calm and professional like inventory, he lunged toward me like an angry Chihuahua in couture, only to be intercepted mid-charge by none other than Emily Carter herself, who stepped in between us like a final boss with a manicure, eyes sharp, voice lethal. "Say that again," she growled, "call him that one more time," and Ryan, suddenly reminded that Emily wasn't just a CEO but a woman who once made a partner cry during a Q3 review, flinched and tried to backpedal with a, "He shouldn't be here, this is inappropriate," but Emily cut him off with the calm fury of someone who knew exactly how many legal ways there were to ruin someone's career. "This is James's house too," she said, and that made everyone freeze, including me, because what the hell, ma'am, what kind of line was that, you trying to give me a heart attack in front of company? But it didn't stop there. Ryan started shrieking again, this time louder, messier, more dramatic than a soap opera villain who just found out the baby isn't his. "So that's it? You're leaving me for your assistant? You're marrying the help," and I was already trying to quietly exit the situation when Emily said, calm as a glacier, "I never agreed to marry you," and Ryan looked like someone had just slapped him with a prenup. "What?" he howled, "We're engaged," and Emily just smiled, slow and deadly, "No, Ryan, you made a post on social media and tagged me, didn't attend the event, didn't confirm anything, and never wore the ring you bought," which, to be fair, was true. I'd seen that ring in the junk drawer next to expired coupons and a broken stapler, and by now Ryan was shaking, red-faced, totally unraveling. "You're choosing him over me?" Him, and that's when Emily reached behind the cabinet, pulled out a literal horsewhip. I kid you not, a whole horsewhip, and smacked it against the wall with a sound that made my soul briefly leave my body. "You keep disrespecting him, I'll teach you some manners myself," she said, and Ryan finally lost all pretense of sanity, bolting for the door while yelling, "You're insane. You're both insane," but before he left, Emily snapped, "Leave the cake," and like a good little tantrum-throwing billionaire, he did, placing the box of overpriced bakery goods at the door like a defeated child offering tribute, and when the door finally slammed shut behind him, silence fell like a warm blanket until Emily turned to me, still holding that damn whip, and muttered, "Unbelievable," then tossed it onto the couch, sat down, and let out the most exhausted sigh I've ever heard in my life, and for a moment we just sat there in the echo of chaos, breathing, existing, trying to process the emotional equivalent of a drive-by, until she looked up, met my eyes, and with the softest expression I've ever seen on her face said, "No one gets to talk to you like that," and I swear something in my chest cracked open, something that had been locked up for years, because for the first time it didn't feel like I was just her assistant, or her shadow, or her scapegoat. It felt like I was hers, like I belonged in that moment, in that room, in that impossible story of hers, and I didn't even realize I was crying until she reached out and gently wiped away a tear with her thumb, whispering, "It's okay, James, you're safe now," and I broke, just completely broke, buried my face in my hands and sobbed like a child who'd been brave for way too long, because the truth was I wasn't angry at Ryan for yelling, or for calling me names, or even for humiliating me in front of the whole office. I was angry because some part of me believed him, because after all these years I still felt like the outsider, the stray dog she'd adopted out of pity, not a man who deserved to stand beside her, and Emily, being Emily, understood all of that without me needing to say a word. She just pulled me into a hug, warm and solid and gentle, held me until the storm inside my chest calmed, and whispered things like, "You're not just my assistant, and they don't know anything about you, and you're the one who's always been there." And eventually I stopped shaking, pulled away, and tried to make a joke because that's what I do. "Well, at least he left the cake," I sniffed, and she laughed, that rare, real laugh that only comes out when she forgets to be the intimidating CEO, and before I could chicken out, I asked the question that had been haunting me for weeks, why are you even marrying him? And she looked away. Her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. My parents. They arranged it, and that was all she needed to say, because I knew exactly what that meant, the pressure, the money, the expectations, and suddenly everything made sense why she let the engagement ride, why she hadn't posted anything herself, why she'd let me plan the damn wedding like it wasn't personal, and I hated it, hated that even someone as powerful as Emily Carter had to bend to the wills of people who didn't know her, didn't love her, didn't care about what made her happy, and I said something I didn't plan, something stupid and reckless and from the heart, you don't have to marry anyone you don't love, and she looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a second I could see everything she was hiding behind that perfect posture and iron will, the loneliness, the fear, the stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, she could have something real, and before either of us could say another word, my phone buzzed and I groaned. If that's Ryan, I'm blocking him, but it wasn't. It was my mom, a rare occurrence, and the text hit like a brick to the chest, come home. Your brother's in the hospital, and just like that, the spell was broken, the city light seemed colder, and reality pulled me back down, reminding me that no matter how far I'd come or who I worked for, I was still a boy from nowhere with people back home depending on me, so I stood up, wiped my face, and told her I needed a few days off, and she didn't ask why, didn't stop me, just nodded and said, take care of yourself. And as I walked out of her apartment, I didn't know what hurt more, leaving her behind, or knowing she was still trapped in a life she didn't choose. The ride home to Kentucky felt like getting slowly microwaved inside a tin can, 7 hours of squeaky bus seats, sticky windows, and the vague scent of sadness and beef jerky clinging to the air while the countryside blurred past, and the whole time I couldn't stop replaying Emily's voice in my head. You don't have to marry someone you don't love, like some forbidden song stuck on repeat. Only now the lyrics were drowned out by my mom's text stacking up like passive-aggressive bricks, asking when I'd arrive, what I'd bring, and whether I was still single and pitiful, because apparently, emotional stability wasn't as important to her as my relationship status or how well I looked in wedding photos. And when I finally stepped off the bus and into my hometown, it hit me like a wave. This place hadn't changed a damn bit. Same peeling paint on the diner signs, same nosy neighbors pretending not to stare, same slow drawl of my mother yelling from the front porch, "You're late, James Walker. Your brother's been upstairs dying of boredom since sunrise," which, by the way, was code for, "He's fine, but I've already picked your future wife," and before I could even drop my bag, she dragged me to the backyard where a full-blown matchmaking ambush was in progress, starring a tall, blonde, effortlessly gorgeous woman in hiking boots and a sarcastic smirk, sitting in my childhood patio chair like she owned the joint, sipping iced tea and looking at me like I was the strangest creature she'd ever seen, and I, in return, stood there in wrinkled jeans and travel sweat, toothbrush still in my pocket, wondering if I'd accidentally stepped into a dating show I hadn't signed up for. "This is Olivia Yu," my mom beamed, proud like she'd discovered America. "She runs a farm-to-table channel online, makes big money, super famous, and she's not allergic to country living like you." And Olivia just tilted her head and said, "You're shorter than I thought," which would've offended me if she hadn't also been right, and that's how I found myself stuck in a small-town rom-com I never auditioned for, eating dinner at a table too small for everyone's opinions and getting cornered by my mom whispering things like, "You're almost 30, and she's got real estate, and you're not exactly getting younger, James," and all I could think about was Emily, how she'd laugh at the plastic floral tablecloth, how she'd roll her eyes at the gossip, how she'd somehow still charm every single old lady in town. And for some reason, that thought ached more than I expected, so I stayed quiet, made it through dinner, then went to bed in my old room that smelled like dust and broken dreams, only to be woken up the next morning by the sound of a tractor and Olivia knocking on my window with a corn cob, telling me to get dressed and help harvest, because apparently flirting meant putting me to work, and somewhere between hauling crates of sweet potatoes and stepping in mud puddles the size of Texas, she asked me if I'd ever thought about quitting city life and coming home for good, and I wanted to say no, hell no, absolutely not, but the truth got tangled in my throat, because part of me was tired of running, of climbing, of fighting for air in boardrooms full of sharks, and the idea of stillness, of growing something real, felt dangerously seductive, even if it came with a side of chicken poop and zero Wi-Fi. But just as I started considering it, my phone rang again, and this time it wasn't my mom or Olivia or anyone from home, it was Emily, and that name alone made my whole body go tense, because I hadn't heard from her since I left, hadn't seen her name light up my screen in days, and seeing it now made me feel something I couldn't name, so I answered with a hesitant, "Hello," and her voice, crisp and low, cut through the Kentucky humidity like a knife. "Where are you?" No hello. No how are you, just that sharp demand like she'd been holding her breath since I left, and I almost laughed. Did Ryan do something dumb again? But she didn't bite. "Your mother told me you're dating a YouTuber and considering a career in corn," she said dryly, and I sighed, already picturing the disaster. "She exaggerates," I muttered. "It's not corn, it's a variety of sustainable produce," and Emily just went silent for a beat before saying, "I'm outside," and I blinked, confused. "Outside where?" And she said, "Your mom's porch," and I nearly dropped the phone, ran out in a panic, and sure enough, there she was, Emily Carter, dressed in white linen, standing under my mom's plastic wind chime like she wasn't the richest person in 3 counties, completely out of place and yet somehow owning the moment like she always did, and my mom, bless her nosy little heart, had clearly already told half the neighborhood because now Mrs. Jenkins from down the road was peeking through her curtains and whispering into her landline like she'd seen Beyoncé, and Emily didn't flinch, just walked up to me, crossed her arms, and asked, "You planning to ghost me forever or just until the wedding?" And I wanted to be mad, wanted to say something clever or cold, but the truth was, seeing her here, in my world, in the place I'd spent years trying to outgrow, cracked me wide open, and all I could say was, "Why'd you come?" And she looked at me like it was obvious, "Because you didn't," and then, softer, "Because I'm tired of being the only one fighting," and I swear, if my heart wasn't already a disaster zone, that would have been the final blow. So I took her hand, led her through the garden paths I'd memorized as a kid, past the chicken coop, past the broken fence, to the spot by the river where I used to dream of escaping, and we sat there, side by side, like 2 people too stubborn to admit they'd been waiting for this, and I finally asked the question that had haunted me for years, "Why me?" And she said, without missing a beat, "Because you were the only one who never asked for anything, never demanded, never used means, still stayed," and I felt that answer in my bones, felt it in every late night we shared, every coffee she made without asking, every moment of silence she filled with trust, and before I could stop myself, I said, "I've been in love with you since grad school," and she didn't even blink, just replied, "I know," and then added, like it wasn't the most earth-shattering thing anyone's ever said, "Me too," and the way she looked at me then, quiet, proud, certain, made me believe in something I'd spent years pretending I didn't need. So I kissed her, right there in the middle of nowhere, in the town I'd tried to run from, surrounded by fireflies and cornfields and the smell of wet dirt, and for once, I didn't feel like the outsider or the assistant or the kid with the sick brother. I felt like someone who belonged, who was chosen, who was finally home. Coming back to New York with Emily felt like waking up from a dream only to find out the dream followed you home, except this time the dream was a sharp-eyed CEO who'd held my hand through a cornfield, kissed me under the stars, and then promptly put me back on her Google Calendar like we hadn't just rewritten the plot of our entire lives in rural Kentucky, and maybe that should have felt surreal. Maybe I should have been spiraling about how messy and public and dangerous this was about to get, but all I could think about was the way she'd said, "Me too," like it wasn't even a question, like we'd both been circling the same orbit for years and just finally collided, and I was still riding that high when I walked into the Carter Group headquarters 2 days later only to find the office in full lockdown mode, everyone whispering behind screens, eyes flicking nervously between Slack messages and breaking news alerts. And before I even made it to my desk, Nathan Reed grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "You need to see this," and shoved his phone in my face, where the headline glared in bold, flaming caps, "Ryan Kim confirms, Emily Carter cheated on me with her assistant, a 7-year affair," and just like that, my soul left my body, floated into the AC vent, and tried to suffocate itself, because sure, I'd known Ryan was petty, unstable, and emotionally constipated, but this was next level, a full-blown smear campaign complete with edited screenshots, paparazzi photos from a decade ago, and a fake, anonymous source, who claimed to have seen me sneaking into Emily's apartment at suspicious hours, which, yes, was technically true, but only if you count strategic pitch planning and late-night PowerPoint revisions as cheating, and by noon, the company was trending for all the wrong reasons. The stock had dipped 4%, and the board was demanding a statement, so naturally, I prepared to pack up my things and start drafting a very professional apology for existing, but before I could even breathe, Emily walked into the war room like a queen arriving at her own trial, heels sharp, bun tighter than ever, eyes on fire, and she didn't wait for anyone to speak. She just walked straight to the head of the table, tossed her phone onto the conference desk, and said, "We're not going to defend the lie. We're going to sell the truth," and I knew in that moment that whatever came next was going to be loud, risky, and probably career-ending, but I also knew I was in, all the way, no questions asked, so we launched the most unhinged yet effective PR counter-campaign the Carter Group had ever seen, starting with a photo Emily and me at the farm, holding hands, no filters, no lighting tricks, just the real deal and the caption. 2,847 days. Not an affair. A love story. Sorry it wasn't your narrative. It broke the internet in 20 minutes flat, and while the trolls flooded in, something else happened to support, real support, comments from women who were sick of being told they couldn't mix business and love, from men who were tired of pretending they didn't fall for their bosses, from random strangers who saw the fire and said, "Hell yeah, burn it all down," and while all that noise kept building, Emily dropped Phase 2, a surprise product launch under our new high-end snack line, aptly titled Scandal, with taglines like, "Too bold for boardrooms," and, "Bite into the drama," and the best part. The packaging included fake tabloid headlines turned into QR codes that led to charity links, and suddenly our drama became a movement, our backlash became branding, and our worst week turned into our biggest sales month in company history. But of course, Ryan wasn't done yet, because men like him never quit while they're behind, so he pulled his last card, showed up to the office building in a designer suit and crocodile tears, screaming about betrayal and true love and demanding that I be fired for misconduct, which would have been laughable if it wasn't so dangerously on brand for him, and the entire lobby watched in horror as security tried to de-escalate, only for Ryan to throw a literal iced latte at me and yell, "You're a fraud. You manipulated her. She's only with you because you're a snake," and I was about to reply with something scathing and maybe illegal when Emily pushed past the crowd, stepped between us again like some divine intermission, and said, loud enough for every soul in the building to hear, "The only snake I see is the one who used my name to climb ladders he didn't earn," and the silence that followed could have crushed a man, but Ryan, bless his villainous energy, kept going. "You never loved me. You never even gave me a chance," and Emily didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared him down and said, "You were never the plan. James was," and the way my heart did a somersault while the security guards escorted him out in handcuffs for property damage and assault. Unmatched, unbeatable, unforgettable, and afterward, when the chaos died down and I finally slumped into my chair, Emily leaned down, tapped the corner of my desk, and said with a smirk, "Told you we make a good team," and I wanted to say a million things. "Thank you, I love you, you're insane and perfect and terrifying," but all I could do was nod and hope she could see the answer in my eyes, and she must have, because later that night, after the press quieted and the shareholders stopped panicking, she pulled me into her office, closed the blinds, and whispered, "So what now, James Walker? Are you still my assistant, or do we rewrite the job description?" And without thinking, I walked over, grabbed her by the waist, and said, "I think it's time we stop hiding behind titles," and kissed her like we had something to prove, not to the board, not to the press, but to ourselves, that we were finally allowed to want, to feel, to choose each other out loud. And that night, wrapped in her arms on a couch I'd once curled up on during overtime marathons, I realized this wasn't just survival anymore. This was love, raw and complicated and real, and I wasn't scared of it anymore, because somewhere between the power plays and scandals and tears, she'd stopped being my boss and started being my home. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be in a relationship with the CEO of Carter Group, sitting at her family estate in the Hamptons with a glass of vintage Cabernet in my hand, dressed in a designer tuxedo picked out by the same woman who once scolded me for using Comic Sans in a pitch deck, I would have laughed until I passed out. But here I was, living a life that felt both ridiculous and weirdly deserved. Because after everything, Ryan's smear campaign, the boardroom war, the viral product line, the public kiss that sent shockwaves through the internet, we weren't just surviving the chaos anymore, we were thriving in it, together, and yet I could tell there was something lingering behind Emily's silence as she looked out over the garden where paparazzi drones buzzed like lazy flies in the sky, her jaw tense, fingers tapping her wineglass like she was counting down to an explosion only she could hear. So I asked, gently, "What's on your mind?" And she turned to me, eyes clear, voice low. "My father called today," and just like that, the temperature dropped 10 degrees in my chest, because Emily never spoke about her father unless it was unavoidable, and when she did, it always came with that expression, the one that said she'd rather chew glass than admit he still had that much power over her life. "He wants to meet you," she added, and I nearly choked on my wine. Because Emily's father was more of a legend than a person. Robert Carter, media tycoon turned venture capitalist. A man so wealthy his dog had a Forbes feature, and so emotionally unavailable he once skipped Emily's graduation to attend a yacht launch in Monaco, and now he wanted to meet me, not because I was a rising exec or key asset to his empire, but because I was dating his daughter, which in Carter speak meant disrupting his curated public image of control. So I swallowed my panic and nodded like I had any idea how to navigate this, and the next morning we flew to his private compound in Aspen, where the air was thin and the tension was suffocating, and when I shook his hand, I realized why Emily was always so cold. Robert Carter didn't speak in words, he spoke in measurements, market shares, ROI, bloodlines, and expectations, and from the moment I said, "Nice to meet you, sir," I knew I was being dissected, weighed, and logged into some internal ledger, but I held my ground, answered his passive-aggressive questions with calm precision, and when he finally asked, "What do you bring to my daughter that money can't buy?" I didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, just looked him in the eye and said, "Peace," and for a moment, just a flicker, his mouth twitched like he'd heard something he didn't expect, but of course he didn't reply, just dismissed me with a polite nod and turned to Emily like I wasn't even in the room. And later that night, when she found me on the balcony staring into the snow-draped mountains, she slipped her hand into mine and whispered, "You did better than I thought," and I smiled, "That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me," and she laughed for the first time that day, which felt like a victory all on its own. And when we got back to New York, the Carter Group was waiting, investors, board members, journalists all eager to see if we'd collapse under the pressure or rise with it, and Emily, being Emily, did the unthinkable. She announced a structural reorganization live on CNBC, naming me as co-CEO, not assistant turned boyfriend, not the man behind the curtain, but equal partner, equal power, and the internet imploded again, half the world screaming nepotism, the other half screaming romance goals, and me. I just stared at her while she spoke and thought, holy hell, she really did this. She handed me the kingdom she built because she believed I could rule beside her, and afterward, when the cameras stopped flashing and the mics were unplugged, I pulled her aside and asked, "Are you sure?" And she said, "James, you stood by me when I had nothing but enemies. Why wouldn't I give you everything now that we've won?" And I didn't cry, not then, not in front of the interns or the PR team or the jealous ex-boyfriends watching from the shadows, but later, alone in her penthouse, when she curled up next to me and whispered, "This is your home now too." I let the tears fall, quiet and stupid and full of everything I'd never said out loud. And the next morning I woke up to a world that was finally mine to shape, not just follow, and Emily beside me, no longer just a boss or a fantasy or a woman on a pedestal, but my partner, real and terrifying and perfect. And somewhere between a morning kiss and a breakfast strategy call, I realized I wasn't just part of her story anymore. I was writing it with her, one scandal, one boardroom, one sunrise at a time.